Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. Today I'm going to be doing a bunch of meal prepping. For me right now, I'm feeling like that's the only way that I can make sure I've got good healthy food options on hand. I mean, I have some stuff that's easy to grab, like chocolate protein powder, stuff like that, but that stuff gets expensive. So today I've got a couple different recipes that I'm very excited to do. First of all, I have a carrot cake recipe, and that one I'll share with you. That's just a public, it's all over the internet. I don't know. If you've tried it, let me know. I haven't yet, and I've heard it's really good. It's good for breakfast. It's gonna be a fun one to try. Then I went to make a cookie, let's see. It's like a peanut butter cookie muffin. And it's one of those that's low carb, low fat, but with protein. And in the evenings, I'm finding I don't need to eat as much, I don't need desserts that are really heavy. I do get hungry before bed, so I'm trying to make them really light fuel. So because of that, I want to have those muffins on hand. And then, what else? Ooh, a friend of mine gave me a bunch of pears, and I was like, I love pears, but I want to make sure they get used before they go bad or anything. So I thought, hey, why not try canning them? So I'm going to be canning them using a sugar-free method and using my mom's oven canning method, where you basically stick it in the oven overnight or a couple hours. I can't remember. I'll have to get the details. And then it seals. Your house doesn't get hot. You don't have to use a pressure canner or like a hot water bath, any of that. So if you guys want to see me make those things, hang around and I'll show you how I do them. Also, I have to add, yes, I am wearing a guy's shirt. This is my husband's shirt. I am I'll be 32 weeks pregnant soon. And at this point, I'm more into comfort than I am into style. So because of that, yeah, are you too? So at this point, I'm more into comfort than style. So because of that, you'll see me wearing the shirt today. So let's get into the kitchen and let's get cooking. And if you guys want to see what I listen to while I work right now, this is what I'm listening to or watching.
Actually integral to the human existence.
If you know what day the podcast comes out, and then you'll know what day I'm recording this. But anyways, it's always good inspiration, and it's good food for thought. But I'm gonna start chopping up my carrots and get going on the carrot cake. So with this protein carrot cake, this is thanks to my sister. She's actually the one who first told me about this. I may have seen it on Instagram, but she was the one that brought it to my attention. At first, I was kind of grossed out by it because I think I saw a different version where they grated the carrots. And I was like, I don't know that I would really like that. You know, carrot cake is good, but the version I saw was like, eh. But then I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know, I should give it a try. I had a bunch of carrots. I needed to use, I wouldn't normally peel the carrots, but these have been in the fridge for, I'm not sure how long. I don't know. I just tend to keep carrots in my fridge, and then if I'm going to make soup or something, then I'll pull them out. But it was, I just figured I would go ahead and grate them and stuff. So I did that and then just chopped them into little chunks and threw them into the blender. I'm not sure how well this would work with like a food processor or a lower grade blender, but thankfully I have a Vitamix, so I was very grateful for that for this recipe. So it blended it up, and you would never know. I actually asked my husband to taste it. I didn't tell him what was in it. I was like, hey, can you try this? See what you think of this. And he thought it was good. He said he would love a chocolate version of it. And so I was like, okay. I never actually told him what was in it. Not that he wouldn't really care to know anyways. But I just was like, there's carrot in it. This is kind of fun. I thought I had a lot more carrots than I actually did. So I ended up having to divide the recipe in half. Now, one thing I did differently, though, is I did add some sweetener. The original recipe says just add some maple syrup or honey or stuff like that when you go to eat it. But I didn't want to have to mess with that. I'm trying to get super basic these days sometimes. So I was like, let's just add sweetener to it, and that way I don't have to worry about adding something else when we go to eat it. Especially with the kids, you know, when they're hungry, ready to eat breakfast, you just try to get food out as quick as you can. So I ended up using Super Sweet, which is a Trim Healthy Mama sweetener. And I did, for this recipe, it was a total of 6 tablespoons. So I'll make sure to make a note of that in the description of the recipe, just in case if you're interested in trying the recipe, then you'll know what I did. There's also, I should probably start linking it. There's a sweetener conversion chart. So if you have a recipe that you would like to make, but maybe your sweetener is different than what I'm using or something, it kind of tells you equal amounts. So that way you don't have to worry about getting too much of your sweetener in or too little. That way you know the amount of sweetener you're adding is appropriate. Anyways, that's one thing I recommend. So essentially this carrot cake did not take long to prep. Literally just chop the carrots and then throw everything into the blender. And then once it was done blending, just dump it in the pan and stick it in the oven. It definitely had a pretty soft texture once it came out of the oven. It was almost more fudge-like, cake fudgy kinda. Definitely not a dry cake at all. So if you're concerned about that, you don't have to worry. It's one that would be great for, it's one that's really great for breakfast. I mean, I had it for snack a couple times. I think I have just a little bit left while I'm doing this voiceover, so I'm gonna have it for snack today as well. But it was great. It was awesome. Next, on to the pears. I decided to do oven canning because that's how my mom did it, and I don't have a giant canner, so I just took the jars. They were brand new jars. Oh, I was a little surprised when I opened them. They popped. They were like sealed or something, or there was air pressure, and it scared me the first one. I was like, I hate this. Kind of like the anticipation of the pop. But I went ahead and cut up the pears. Some of them I was able to peel with the peeler. Others, I just took the knife and essentially peeled them that way. A bunch of them were still quite firm, but some of them, as you can kind of see, were getting a little bit soft, and then the skin was getting stuck in my peeler. But I just cut them into chunks. What I'm going to do is use this for cobblers and stuff like that. My husband loves peaches, and so I thought, hey, this would be kind of fun to try. Go ahead and just swap out the peaches and cobblers for some pears. We'll have to report back what we think. I thought I would fill about 6 quarts, but I got 2 full ones and a half a quart. So, I mean, it was pretty good. I don't do it enough to feel super confident with oven canning, so it was good for, I guess, the start. Alright, so for my snack this morning, I'm having some of this carrot cake. It tastes just like, it reminds me a lot of like a pumpkin pie filling, only it's carrot. It does taste a little eggy, but I'm thinking as it sets that it may taste once it's in the fridge a little bit, but it's so good. Think like fall. It's got spices and oh, it's really, really good. I gave some to the kids and then they're begging off of my plate. But I do like how I added sweetener to it, because then I don't have to add maple syrup or honey, stuff like that, because I'm trying to keep, I don't want to get like crazy calorie heavy. So, you'd like some more? There you go. Thank you. So, case in point. Anyways, gonna take a little break and then back to the pears. So back to the recipe. For the pears, I used some citric acid and then a bit of lemon juice powder. I could have just thrown lemon juice in, but I had these and I hardly use them, so I was like, let's use that. So it's just essentially lemon. Probably the same thing as, is that the same thing as citric acid? Ascorbic acid? I don't know, whatever. And then I added some stevia. I used my conversion chart just to make sure I was getting the right amount. I did have to like divide the recipe a lot because the original recipe I was using called for like 20 quarts. So it was for a good bit of canning, and here I was just doing like 3 jars. So I mixed that up, divided that among the jars, and then just topped it off with water till it was about like 1 inch from the top. I realize oven canning is one of those hot topics, kind of like co-sleeping or, some of these things. It's something that my mom has had great success with, and I wouldn't personally do meat, I don't think, with oven canning. From what I've heard, you only want to do pressure canning for meat, is that right? Anyways, for doing fruit and veggies, I found it works really well. Like 2 years ago, I had a bunch of zucchini, so I made some relish, sweet pickle relish, and that turned out really well. I think I actually have like one small jar left of that. Speaking of which, I just got some zucchini, so I was thinking I might make another batch of that. I like to do that all sugar-free as well, which that's another thing. You don't have to use sugar because sugar isn't the real preservative in stuff like this. So for the fruit, obviously it's the citric acid, and then if you're doing jams or stuff like that, then it would be more the pectin or the gel that you use. Threw those in the oven for about 3 hours and had the temperature around 200, and then I just let them cool until they were all done and then pulled them out. I came across this recipe for a really, really yummy chia seed pudding. It reminds me of tapioca pudding. I think probably because of the vanilla flavor. But if you want a really delicious pudding, oh, this one's so good. You do have to prep it ahead of time because the chia seeds need to take time to thicken. I find it's best like after a day and a half of being in the fridge. You do kind of have to shake it up to keep the chia seeds from getting stuck together. But I also used a bit of glucose that helps thicken it as well. And then added some stevia, strawberries, vanilla extract, and obviously the almond milk. And just shook that up, mixed it up, and threw it in the fridge, and then it's all ready to go. Next up is a recipe for earth milk. This is one of those that's really nice if you want to get extra greens in, or maybe you've had your meal but you still feel a little snacky and you don't really need more food but you want something more. So that's where this comes handy. You might take two tea bags of oolong tea, and then you add a bit of gelatin to it and just let that dissolve in the hot water. And then you would pour that into your blender, and that's when you would add your greens. I use spinach. You could use like small baby lettuce, stuff like that. But I just used my spinach. And I got like extra bags this week because I was like, I want to make a bunch of this. I was kind of inspired to try to up my veggie intake. I was reading through the Trim Healthy Mama cookbook and just reminded of the importance of veggies and the effect they have on your system. And I saw this recipe and I was like, I haven't made that in quite a while. Let's go ahead and try it. So that's why I kind of got inspired to make it. Plus, it's one of the recipes that's free online, so I'll be able to link it and share it with you guys if you want to look up the details. Then, anyways, getting back to the recipe, you also add some cinnamon and some collagen and MCT oil, and then you just blend that up. Now, I did end up making a concentrate of this. After I made the initial batch, I was like, well, that was easy. I have all the ingredients out. Let's just go ahead and make another. So I doubled it, and I poured them into little jars. I will say they are a little bit different the day after, especially when you don't have the large amount of liquid, because they kind of gelled a little bit in the jar that I had, but I was able to add a bunch of water and just keep shaking it, and then it wasn't quite emulsified the same. Probably I could throw it in the blender with some ice and then make it more like a slushy, but it still tasted really, really good. So if you remember, I had mentioned I was going to make some peanut butter cookie muffins, and I was able to get those going. I think in hindsight, maybe my peanut butter flour was a little bit going. It might have sat around a little too long. It is defatted, but still there's a bit of fat left in it, and so because of that, you want to make sure to use it in good time, which I'm afraid I didn't. So I didn't really notice anything until after they were made and cooled. And then the next day I was like, they kind of have an off smell. It could be because my baking blend was possibly going to, like, that also has oils in it from the almond flour or stuff like that. But this recipe is kind of one of those weird ones because the ingredients, because it's so runny, but it still turns out like it still cakes up, which is kind of weird, but kind of cool. I had thrown that in the oven, then I got the chocolate syrup going. That's for the top. I let it boil down a little bit too long, so then it got a bit of a crust on the top, so I had to add a little more water. It was kind of a whoops. So then when I went to pour the icing on the top, it was a little bit chunky. I tried blending it in a little Nutri blender, but it did not blend very well. Anyways, the chocolate syrup turned out great. It was kind of thick, which was what I was hoping for. It was to the point where I could drizzle it on, which was pretty nice. I will say my muffins definitely are nothing beautiful to look at, but it was nice to be able to make a batch of these just to have them on hand, because I also wanted another kind of low carb, low fat type of a snack to have on hand. And this has lots of protein in it with all the egg whites, so it was one of those. So like I said with the other recipes, I'll be sure to link them in the description if you're interested in trying them and seeing what you think. Being able to eat healthy is something I'm definitely try to not take for granted, and I find the more I do it, the more I desire it, the more I crave it. So if that's something that you've kind of wondered about, maybe you should give it a try. I know when I was younger, I would watch people eat sugar-free stuff and I'd be like, that's gross. That doesn't sound like fun. But then once I realized there actually were sweeteners and things you could use, it's not like everything's got to be sour, bitter, disgusting. You can actually get some pretty good stuff. And yeah, once you acclimatize to it, your taste buds change, and it's crazy the stuff that tastes good. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. You'll have to let me know if you try any of these recipes and what you think. And if there's any fall recipes or things you want me to try, let me know. It's really weird. We've had our weather it's like in the 60s in the morning now, and it feels so weird. Normally here in the desert, it gets to like hot. It just stays hot for like a long time into October. So to have the mornings be super cool, I'm suddenly like feeling like all the fall stuff. It's really weird. I love summer, but I also really like, apple cinnamon tea or all the different pumpkin desserts and stuff, pumpkin sweetbreads. Anyways, you guys can look forward to that coming up in the next couple videos. And just want to thank you for hanging around. And for those of you who subscribe, thanks again, and I'll see you guys next week with another video.